a session of Episcopal Synod, so that, as in the case of an Ezekiel who sat side by side with stunned exiles, so we would be a ministry of presence. And we held a service in one of our ghetto township churches. The people were stunned, devastated by the naked violence of that massacre. I preached, and I used Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 to 9. God's words which Yahweh asked Moses to announce to the children of Israel. And I said to our people gathered there, our God is not deaf. Our God has heard our cries. Our God is not stupid. Our God knows our suffering. Our God is not blind. God has seen and sees our pain and anguish. And yes, our God will come down and set us free. Yes, our God will come down to open the prison doors and lead our leaders from prison and lead our leaders back from exile. For we had learned from our Jewish tradition that God, our God, is notoriously biased, forever taking the side of the weak, the oppressed, the downtrodden, against the kings and the powerful oppressors. Our God had been met first in the Bible story, not in a sanctuary. Our God was met first in the mundane world of politics. Our God taking the side of a rebel of slaves against the mighty Pharaoh. God, we said to our people, is not neutral. God sided with Uriah the Hittite against his own favorite, King David, after David's adultery with Bathsheba and the murder of Uriah. Thou art the man. Anywhere else, the king could have got away with both actions, but not in Israel. It really seemed as if the Jewish scriptures were written specifically for us. The story of Naboth's vineyard and King Ahab and Jezebel being confronted on Yahweh's behalf by Elijah seemed to have been written especially with our situation in mind, where blacks, not exclusively, but overwhelmingly, were shipped in their millions, like so many pawns, in population removal schemes, and dumped in poverty-stricken Bantustan homelands, hardly able to eke out a living, cut off from the more affluent so-called white South Africa.
Former South African Archbishop, Nobel laureate Desmond Tutu, giving a speech at the Old South Church in Boston. We'll return to the conclusion of his address in a minute.
ويصلي لإله في العيون العسلية بين ردة بندقية والذي يعرف رت ينحني ويصلي لإله في العيون العسلية.
Lebanese musician Marcel Khalifa, the song Rita and the Rifle. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting on over 500 stations around the country on Pacifica and NPR and low-power FM and college and community radio stations, as well as public access TV and PBS TV stations and both TV satellite networks. Dish Network Channel 9415, Free Speech TV, 9410 Link TV, and on DirecTV Channel 375. And we're video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. As we return to the conclusion of the address of the former South African Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who's speaking at the Old South Church in Boston, speaking at a conference sponsored by the Palestinian Christian organization Sabeel. Nobel Peace Laureate Tutu spoke about his struggle against the apartheid government in South Africa as a religious leader.
It was exhilarating, preaching to the oppressed and downtrodden. The well-to-do, the powerful, often complained that we were mixing religion with politics, and we would declare that we're doing no more, in fact, than just preaching the gospel. That they had brought us the Bible from wherever, and we were taking it seriously. We would be accused of being political, and I often retorted, I don't know which Bible you are reading. I must say, I've never heard the poor complain, Bishop Tutu, now you are being political. If anything, they would possibly have said, you are not political enough. And God vindicated us. Apartheid rulers beat the dust, as all oppressors have done always. For this is a moral universe. Right and wrong matter. It cannot happen that evil, injustice, and oppression can have the last word. No. Ultimately, goodness, justice, freedom, these will prevail. What is this to the point? Now, I could have spent a great deal of time rehearsing what we all know. How I experienced a déjà vu when I saw a security checkpoint which Palestinians had to negotiate most of their lives. That I was reminded so painfully of the same checkpoints in apartheid South Africa, when arrogant white policemen treated almost all blacks like dirt. Or when someone pointed to a house in Jerusalem and said, that used to be our home, but now it has been taken over by the Israelis. Which would make me recall so painfully similar statements in Cape Town by coloureds who had been thrown out of their homes and relocated in ghetto townships some distance from the town centre. I could have bemoaned the illegal wall that has encroached on Palestinian land, separated families, divided property, and made what used to be a short walk to school turn into an expensive nightmare voyage, running the gauntlet of checkpoints, etc., etc. I could have said there were things that even you didn't find even in apartheid South Africa. That we had things that you didn't see in an apartheid South Africa, such as collective punishment. I have not gone that route. I have not gone that route. No. I have chosen a different approach. My address is really a cri de coeur, a cry of anguish from the depth of my heart an impassioned plea to my spiritual relatives, the offspring of Abraham like me. Please, please, hear the call, the noble call of your scriptures, of our scriptures, to be with the God of the Exodus, who took the side of a bunch of slaves against the powerful Pharaoh. Be on the side of the God who intervened through his prophet Elijah on behalf of Naboth. Hear the plea of your scriptures and stand with the God who intervened through his prophet Nathan on behalf of Uriah against King David. Be on the side of the God who revealed a soft spot in his heart for the widow, the orphan, and the alien. Be on the side of the God whose Spirit sends us out to preach good news to the poor. Don't be found fighting against this God, your God, our God, the God who hears the cry of the oppressed, the God who sees their anguish, the God who will always come down to deliver them. Be not opposed to the God whose Spirit, when it anoints you, makes you concerned for the poor. This is your calling. If you disobey that calling, if you do not heed it, then as sure as anything, one day you will come a cropper. You will probably not succumb to an outside assault militarily. With the unquestioning support of the United States of America, you are probably impregnable. But you who are called, are they who are called, asked to deal with the oppressed, the weak, the despised compassionately, caringly, remembering what happened to you in Egypt and much more recently in Germany. Remember and act appropriately. If you reject your calling, you may survive for a long time, but you will find it is all corrosive inside. And one day, you will implode. A recent report by a clinical psychologist who was herself a soldier in the Israeli Defense Force, Nofan Yeshai Katrim, at the Hebrew University, speaks of how Israeli soldiers were gratuitously cruel and carried out acts of brutality to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. One of the soldiers, she said, told her how a new commander went out with them on patrol. Because of curfew, there were no Palestinians in sight except a 4-year-old boy who was playing with the sand